You promised the budget would be balanced next year. Will it?
We're not going to take the conservative approach to cuts.
Sorry, this was the liberal approach in the platform, in the election platform. This was your platform. You said you would balance the budget next year. That's the liberal approach that you ran on. Are you now saying you were wrong when you ran on that?
What I'm saying is we're not going to take the conservative approach to cutting veteran services, for example, the conservative approach to boutique tax credits that only benefit the very wealthy. What we're going to do is continue to invest in Canadians because we know that Canada works when Canadians are working, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Will the budget be balanced next year, as you promised? That's a yes or no.
What we're doing right now is investing in Canadians.
Would you know if the budget's going to be balanced next year, or is there another minister who'd be responsible for answering that question?
What I can tell you is that we will continue with the successful approach we've taken to create a remedy to the failed approach that came before us.
Okay, so you don't know. You're the Finance Minister of Canada. You're not sure if next year the budget will be balanced. Well, I'll inform you then. Your plan foresees another quarter century of deficits. That's a quarter century longer than you promised when you were knocking on doors in the last election, Minister. During that quarter century, how much debt would the Government of Canada accumulate?
What I can tell you is that the additional $150 billion of debt that was put on by the previous government is obviously an additional challenge that we face, but we still find ourselves with a very low net debt to GDP. We're the best in the G7. We continue to be in a position where
under your fiscal plan, how much new debt will be added before the budget is balanced?
Mr. Minister, you have the right to finish your answer as long as it's not too long.
We will continue with the approach to having a very positive fiscal situation by reducing our debt as a function of our economy over time to among the lowest levels that we've seen.
So the minister doesn't know if the budget will be balanced next year, and when I inform him that his own fiscal plan sees 25 years of deficits, he can't tell Canadians how much debt will the Government of Canada accumulate during that time. I did a Control F on your budget, Minister, and the word balance, the term balanced budget, does not appear once, according to my search. You can't do a balanced budget. You can't even write the words balanced budget. Can you say the word balanced budget?
Here's what I can say. The Conservative approach to cuts to things like veteran services, to cuts to things like people that are supposed to implement a new pay system for federal government services clearly failed. We ended up with a low growth rate. We ended up with a high unemployment rate. So the fact that more Canadians are working, that we have among the lowest unemployment rates in 40 years, I hope you're celebrating that because I imagine there's more people in your riding that are working, which is a positive for our economy. You can't even say the words balanced budget.
I'm giving you equal time, both of you. So, Minister, if you could finish that answer, and then Mr. Poilievre will have another.
I'm happy to have his next question.
Okay.
So, you don't know if the budget's going to be balanced next year. You don't know how much debt you're planning to add to the Canadian people. And now you can't even say the words balanced budget. Are you that allergic to balanced budgets that you can't even say the word?
What we have shown over the last 2 years is a very clear focus on Canadians. And what we've shown is that when you do that, you create a better economy. So the fact that our economy is growing significantly better than it was when we came into office, the fact that hundreds of thousands of more Canadians are working, the fact that we have the lowest unemployment rate we've seen in almost 40 years, lower than we saw in the entire period of the last government, these are enormous positives. So when Canadian families look at where they're at right now, consider the advantage that they took
where they're at is deeper
November
in debt
2015 when they got a new government. They are likely very pleased to see that we are in a much better position to be resilient to face any economic challenge that we face.
Go ahead.
So, Minister, the reality is you are adding debt at twice the rate you promised. You said that you would balance the budget next year. Now, you're not even capable of telling the Canadian people how much additional debt your plan would add over the next quarter century of deficits that you've set us on track to run as a country. At this point, are you prepared to admit that you had no intention of keeping your promise to the Canadian people in 2019, in 2015, when you promised the budget would be balanced next year?
It's a challenge when someone hasn't had experience in managing a balance sheet or, in fact, managing anything of any substance. But what I can tell you is that what we found is that the way for us best to manage our economy is to reduce our debt as a function of the economy over time. And what we're seeing is that over the 5-year span that we've actually reduced the debt as a function of our economy and will continue to do so, putting us in a resilient place to deal with any economic challenge. The good news is we are in a strong position. We continue to be fiscally responsible. The government, as a function of the economy, is staying constant. That is a place where Canadians understand that we are focused on their interests and making sure our economy is stronger over time.